Way to go, Tic Tac!
That's how you punch.
Wakanda forever!
Nah, you wouldn't have heard of me.
Let me put you on hold.
Dance off, bro! He's a friend from work!
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
What up, guys? It's Dom, and welcome back to another movie review. Today we are going over and ranking Ford v Ferrari. Ford v Ferrari, released in 2019, directed by James Mangold. American car designer Carroll Shelby and driver Ken Miles battle corporate interference and the laws of physics to build a revolutionary car for Ford in order to defeat Ferrari at the 24-hour Le Mans in 1966. So this movie was requested to me by Alex Tilton 7905. And if you want to see a movie that you like get reviewed by me, make sure to comment it down below and I'll add it to the list so I can review it when I get to it. But when it comes to this movie, I recently watched Air and I loved it. I love when true stories actually come to life on the big screen. I feel like if a movie is based off of true events, it's either amazing and the plot is really good, or they stunk it up and they kind of ruined the whole true story aspect of it, and then it's not as good. So I feel like it's either one side of the spectrum or the other side. There's no really in between. And this movie, just like Air, did it correctly. I feel like the story was really, really good. The plot was intriguing. The characters were well written. They put actual thought into what can we do to make this based off of the true story, but still very, very entertaining for the audience, and they nailed it all in one go. So I'm very excited about it. Let's just get right into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. The first essential aspect is plot. So like I mentioned in the intro, it's based off of true events, and it's either one side of the spectrum or the other. This definitely on the good side. They did really well. I feel like they actually did put serious thought into this movie. They made sure that there's good character development, that there's an intriguing plot for viewers to follow, to be more interested in, to want to keep watching the movie. And yes, they don't want to change main elements because it is based off of true events, but directors have some leeway when it comes to movies like this, where they can change things slightly enough to be more entertaining when it comes to a movie compared to what might happen in real life, where there's only a few bits and pieces here or there that are actually entertaining. So they definitely lucked out as well that it's an actual entertaining story. It's about this really, really good driver and Shelby, who joined Ford in order to make this supercar. So that is an interesting story on itself, and if it was a documentary, it'd still be interesting, but they made it even better in the way that they did. So the plot, hands down, really, really good. The second essential aspect is attraction. So if you're not a big fan of cars or racing, and that's why you kind of stayed away from this movie, I still highly recommend you watch it. I think they did a good job of balancing out the actual racing and cars aspect and just the actual story itself for that broader audience to be able to enjoy it all together. It doesn't matter if you don't like cars or not, you'll still enjoy this movie just because of how well written it is. So hands down, it is very entertaining, and even people that don't enjoy the main purpose of this movie will still enjoy the movie. The third essential aspect is theme. The message this movie had was, simply put, it doesn't matter what's at the finish line. All that matters is the journey to get there. So for example, in the racing, it doesn't matter if you're first, second, third, last. As long as you're enjoying yourself and doing something that you're passionate about, doing something you love, and experiencing that journey on the route to that finish line, it really doesn't matter what place you came in, as long as you yourself loved what you did. The fourth essential aspect is dialogue. The conversations within this movie definitely felt like real conversations. It felt like there were actual people speaking to other actual people. There weren't any discrepancies or any weird moments where it didn't sound real, where it pulled me out. I honestly found myself intrigued the whole time. There was nothing that was said by any of the actors that threw me off at all. The fifth essential aspect is acting. So the acting in this movie was honestly phenomenal. I'm going to keep comparing this movie to Air, because that's a movie that I just watched recently as well, and they both have a lot of similarities. Both are based off of true events. Both have great acting, great dialogue. The plot is well written and enticing in general to many audiences, not just what the stories are based off of. So I'm going to keep comparing it to that, and just like in that movie, the acting was great. I think all the characters did their part perfectly. There wasn't really any even side characters that threw me off, that pulled me out. I feel like everyone did the purpose they were supposed to, even the characters that were meant to be hated. They did a good job of being hated. So some of the actors I want to list off here: Matt Damon, who played Shelby, he was one of the two main characters in this movie. again, if he didn't do the great acting he did in this movie, it would pull me out. The movie wouldn't be nearly as good because he is such a main centerpiece. Your attention is focused on him for most of the movie. So if he screws up, it would be a big mistake. But he never did. He did a really good job of convincing me that he is this character. He is Carroll Shelby. And I love that character. I mean, I wanted everything to work out well for him and Ken Miles. And speaking of Ken Miles, Christian Bale, who played Miles, he did an amazing job as well. And I gotta say, his accent, he did a good job. I did not expect that accent to come out of his mouth because I know what he sounds normally, but he did a really good job of shifting his vocal cords to make it sound more like the actual person that he was representing. And him and Matt Damon did a phenomenal job in this. Obviously, as I said multiple times probably in this, and you guys are probably getting sick of it, but nonetheless, they did an amazing job, and without them, this movie would not nearly be as good. And Josh Lucas, who played Leo. Now, when I mentioned hateable earlier, he was the man that I was referring to because his character, I hated his guts. I wanted nothing to work out for this man, but that's clearly what he was trying to portray. So he did a really good job of being this representation of corporate America, of corporate Ford, trying to ruin Miles and Shelby's chances of really getting what they want as long as Ford gets what they want. So he did a really good job of convincing me that he is this dickhead that works for Ford. So everyone in this movie did their assigned jobs really, really well, and it did show. This movie was really good. The sixth essential aspect is cinematography. So when it came to the visuals, I mean, they did a really good job of making it feel like it is 1966, not just with the props, but the visuals as well. The look of the movie did make it feel that way, so I do have to give them props for that. And when it came to the emotions, they did a really good job with developing these characters to the point where you have an emotional attachment to them. If anything happens bad to them, you feel it in your core. Just like towards the end, I'm not going to obviously spoil since this is spoiler free, but something happened and you definitely did feel it. It definitely pulled on your heartstrings. You felt it in your soul. And that is something that movies that want to have this emotional impact need to do more. They need to focus on making sure that you are in tune and emotionally involved with these characters so that you can feel the pain that they feel. So they did that really well in this, not only with the two main characters, but honestly with the whole story, with the plot in general. It ties you to it and you want everything to work out well. Obviously, real life doesn't work like that, but for the movie, you want everything to work out well. The seventh essential aspect is editing. So this movie is 2 hours and 32 minutes long. I like that length. I feel like this is a well thought out story that needed that extra time in order to evolve and be one that can be appreciated by the audience. So I do like that length, especially since it was paced well. The one problem that I could bring up, and that's just nitpicking with editing, is the beginning. It was kind of flashes of the two, three main characters of this movie. So you see like a small portion of their life. And that did throw me off at first because I kind of lost myself in that first 5 minutes. But besides that, there was no issues. So because I can overlook that, because it was such a small portion, and it was just trying to quickly start the character development at the beginning, which makes sense. It kind of showed you flashes of Shelby when he was still racing in order to get that context that he was a racer instead of just throwing you into the movie. So I am glad they did that. I just wish they cleaned it up a little bit. But besides that, the editing was great with the pacing, the length, even the ending. Everything was good when it came to the editing. The eighth essential aspect is soundtrack. Now, as much as I'm loving this movie, I don't remember what the soundtrack was. I have no recollection of anything. It's just not memorable, I guess, but it really didn't need it. The story was so involving that maybe I just wasn't paying attention to the music because I was so involved with what was actually happening on screen. The ninth essential aspect is directing. So I feel like it's the director's job to take these previous 8 essential aspects, put them together to make a movie that's worth watching. And the director of this movie is James Mangold, and he's previously directed 10 movies, and they were Heavy, Copland, Girl Interrupted, Kate and Leopold, Identity, Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, Night and Day, The Wolverine, and Logan. And if you're a longtime viewer of my channel, you know I have already done reviews for The Wolverine and for Logan. You know I loved both those movies, Logan more than the other one. But you also know that I haven't watched any of the other movies. I have not done reviews or watched in general any of the movies besides the two most recent ones. But based off of those, I mean, he has only improved. He did a phenomenal job with this movie, and that's saying a lot since Logan was such a success as well. I think Logan was a really well-made film, so the fact that he improved and made it even better here says a lot. So I definitely do think he was the man for the job, especially after the resume he had with his two most previous movies. And the 10th essential aspect is time. So if you love the racing and love the driving, you will think this stands the test of time 100%. I personally do as well. I do have slight bias since I do like cars, I do like the races, so I will always remember this movie. I feel like even if you don't, this movie still will stand the test of time for you personally because it's such a well-written true story. So I really do feel like when I said at the beginning that true stories can either be really good plot-wise or really bad. And I feel like if the true story is really good plot-wise, it will stand the test of time. It will be remembered as a successful, based off true events movie. So I think this stands the test of time, but you let me know what you think in the comments. Now, onto the reviews. So, Rotten Tomatoes critics give it a 92%, Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it a 98%, and IMDb gave it an 81%. Now, IMDb can be very harsh. I personally don't think it belongs in an 81%. I don't think it belongs in the 80s at all. I like in between critics and audience. I like that low to mid 90s. I feel like there's such minimal things that are problematic with this movie that it's such a nitpick too, what I found. So I feel like it doesn't have many problems. It deserves to be up there in the 90s. There isn't much improving this movie could do, especially since it's based on a true story and they did it correctly. They couldn't really change the plot anymore to make it more interesting. They did everything they could, and everything they did was good. So, I mean, it deserves to be in the 90s. Now, if I'm wrong, let me know. If I'm really overhyping it, let me know that as well. But I personally believe it deserves to be in those 90s. And finally, the rankings. So, in 2019, it's going to be second, above Dark Phoenix and below Joker. Now, it's above Dark Phoenix for obvious reasons. That movie is not the best. It's not terrible, but it has a lot of issues that it has to tune out when it comes to the plot and the character development, even the emotional side of the movie. It just has a lot of things to tune, and this movie doesn't. This movie has basically nothing to really need to fix up, so that gave it that big edge. And I put it below Joker simply because both movies have cinematography going for them, have great stories, great characters, and amazing acting. I honestly just think that Joaquin Phoenix's acting in that movie is very hard to beat. The amount of skill it took to do what he did, he even went off script to make the movie even better. That is a hard thing to do in any story. I remind of everyone this every single time I talk about Joker is in that scene where he punches the clock until it falls off the wall, he breaks his hand. That's not even in the script. He just put himself in the mind of Joker and decided this is probably what he would do in that moment. And he did it, and it was absolute cinema. So that movie has a special place in my heart, especially since I'm a big Joker fan. And yes, that's not my favorite rendition of the Joker, but I cannot disrespect how much effort and how much of his heart, soul, and blood he put into that role. He showed everyone that that is a good version of the Joker, and he proved it. And that is why really this Joker is above it. It's not even by much. It's really by a hair. It's just personal preference of what I'm thinking the best acting is, and that is that one. Otherwise, these movies are pretty on par with each other. In the 2010s, it's going to be third, above Captain America the Winter Soldier, and again below Joker. I'm not going to explain why it's below Joker again, since I just did, but it's above the Winter Soldier because I feel like, again, it has less problems with it. Now, Winter Soldier doesn't have many problems. It is an amazing movie. It's definitely, people are saying it's overrated for some reason. I don't know why. I think that movie is gas. It is really, really good. I just think that the true story aspect of the plot brings a special kind of attention from the audience to be more intrigued in it. Because if you don't like superheroes, if you don't like Marvel, you will not enjoy The Winter Soldier as much as I would, for example. So I did take the audience into consideration here when I did these rankings, and that is a big reason of why Ford v Ferrari is above The Winter Soldier, but I don't know. That's just what I had in my gut, so I put it on the list. And in all time, it's going to be fourth, above Air and below Joker. Now, again, I already explained why it's below Joker, so I won't do it again, but It's above Air, and this was honestly the hardest thing to rank for me. I could not decide which one I wanted above which because they're both so similar. They're both based off true stories. They have very good acting. They have good cinematography. The one thing that I put above Air when it comes to Ford versus Ferrari is the emotional side. Now, both do really well of developing the characters and getting you to have that emotional attachment to them. I just think there's more emotional risk and really more moments that put your emotions to the test for the characters in Ford v Ferrari. So that is the only reason it's above it. Otherwise, I would figure out if I can put them both at third, for example, or fourth, because they're really close. I still suggest to go watch both of those if you haven't. That's all I have for Ford v Ferrari. If you guys enjoyed this review, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to comment what movie you want me to review next. What did you guys think of this movie if you've seen it? And I really do suggest that you guys see it. Come back to this video, comment, let me know what you thought of it. I'm very curious. I want to know if I'm overhyping this movie and Air, or if they actually do stand the test of time in the way that I presented it. If you want to see someone that does something similar to me, both of us do movie reviews. We both have the rankings at the end. We both have the 10 essential aspects. Go subscribe and watch Mr. Majoritarian. He is my best friend. He's the one that got me into movie reviewing. Again, he does the same exact thing that I do, but with a little bit of a different opinion for me. So obviously our lists are completely different, but his link will always be in my description. And I hope you guys have an amazing night. Peace out.